Science has yet to find an explanation for some aspects of our planet. Muted ruins of long-gone towns, big buildings without obvious creators, full civilizations that arose and then mysteriously disappeared, leaving no physical evidence behind. None of this is a myth. Indeed, they exist, historically documented, researched by archaeologists. The riddle is still unsolved. What if their knowledge was different from ours? Could it be that their lack of interaction serves as a cautionary signal? Tap subscribe for 7 years of curiosity and then get ready for our trip down memory lane. Wish you the best of luck. We can start now. In a valley long cut off from modern highways, beneath the far rocks of northern Anatolia, lies the Hall of Lost Names. After more than 2,000 years of sealing, archaeologists have opened a hitherto undiscovered cave system. It appeared ordinary at first, like any other collapsed chamber on some obscure hill. Subsequently, though, they uncovered an anomaly. All of a sudden, the once rough and natural tunnel walls took on a new form and texture. Neither erosion nor polishing had left the granite any rougher than a glassy surface. Some other substance, similar to the stone, had liquefied and then hardened again. What is now known as the Hall of Lost Names was found at the very end of the passageway, concealed behind a perfectly balanced chunk of obsidian. Dark volcanic glass was sculpted throughout the room's whole structure. Even in the middle of July, the walls seemed icy. The walls were covered in hundreds of names, each one carefully spaced out in fine, narrow font. Names only, no positions, no anniversaries. These came from nowhere. Ancient civilizations, not include the Egyptian, Greek, Sumerian, or Roman ones. They weren't local, and the specialists couldn't find any evidence of their origins elsewhere. Many of them even deviated from recognized norms of language use. Names seem to have multiple layers of significance, some consisting of a single word and others of complete strings of symbols, as if the writer had exclusive knowledge of them. The researchers were mainly disturbed by the detail rather than the quantity. Like a machine, each name was neatly carved. Effortlessly draw lines without any overlap, mistakes, chips, or hesitations. Whoever carved these had a wonderful hand. To what end, and with what means? The room was once supposed to serve as a shrine. There were no additional items discovered. Therefore, it could be a memorial to a vanished culture. Just the names, no skeletons, sacrifices, or other ceremonial artifacts. From floor to ceiling, wall after wall, language experts looked for trends. Even when interpreted in that light, the symbols made no sense. Some even compared them to early prototyping. The more they dug inside the room, the more strange it got. Certain names, when stated out loud, appeared to have peculiar echoes, as if the space itself were reacting. There were others that seemed almost warm. Some disappeared in bright light, but resurfaced when the sun went down. Even the obsidian wasn't native to the area. Nowhere else in the area could compare. The substance contained trace amounts of components not typically present in obsidian flows seen in nature, according to laboratory testing. The possibility that it was heated beyond the capabilities of ancient kilns, or that it was synthetic, was even raised by some. Next, the most disturbing revelation was made. After digitally scanning the engravings, experts discovered a secret message inside the designs. Something strangely mathematical, like a harmonic ratio, almost like music but locked in stone, emerged when the names were arranged in a spiral from the center outward on the wall during the mapping process. It was vetted. Each symbol was given a tone by a professional musician. When the pieces were performed in succession, the auditorium gave the impression of resonating with a subtle, continuous vibration, as if it were the Earth's voice or the distant hum of an engine. By itself, people started avoiding going there. Several people reported having dreams in which they were inside the chamber prior to its opening. Some people thought the names weren't mere markings. They had life in them. The belief that reciting them out loud would cause poor health, hallucinations, or bad luck. Naturally, the group disregarded the reports. They claimed it was superstition until one of them vanished. No one ever heard from a young graduate student whose job, it was to catalog the exterior wall. Her tools were precisely where she had left them. With the scanner turned off, the headlamp remained on, continued to buzz, but she had departed. Not a single trace of a struggle or footprint. The project was subsequently terminated. All access was revoked to the chamber, and the records were discreetly filed away. Almost no images are left. The location of the cave were removed from official publications, and no high-resolution scans were made available. The Hall of Lost Names is more than a mere artifact, according to some. It serves as a warning. Imagine instead that the purpose of the names wasn't to be remembered, but to be contained. So what if they're not even real names? The same thing, yet something different? Something like a registry, a jail, or a stopwatch. Is a mystery. Strange vibrations near the ancient site are occasionally reported by hikers, nevertheless. A buzzing sound emanating from the rock immediately below the surface. They also claim to hear whispers when a specific wind direction passes through the valley. Surrounded by low mountains and calm pine forests, in the highlands of southern Turkey, there is a fading shrine. An old settlement had no road leading to it, only a weathered stone walkway that had been partially buried by the ground and time. Local legends spoke of a temple hidden nearby, older than memory, carved into the face of a limestone cliff. Few had seen it, and those who had couldn't agree on where exactly it was. It was simply there one day, then gone the next, not collapsed, not buried, just gone. In 1997, a team of surveyors hired for an unrelated mapping project stumbled across something odd. Their instruments picked up a hollow behind a cliff face where the rock should have been solid. A ground-penetrating radar scan showed a structure inside the rock, complete with archways, columns, and chambers. They returned with equipment, cleared the loose stone, and sure enough, beneath a thin crust of limestone was a carved doorway. No inscriptions, no warnings, just a seal of perfectly smooth stone. They broke through. Inside, they found something astonishing. A temple, small but precise. The air smelled dry and ancient. Its walls were lined with carvings, scenes of worship, celestial patterns, and a strange motif of eyes repeated over and over. There were no statues of gods, no relics, but the design was intentional, symmetrical, mathematical, almost obsessive. The floor was bare. The walls were clean, but there were signs of recent life. Simple mats, a clay cup, a still unburned candle, and on the altar, a bowl of dried herbs, as if someone had left mid-prayer. It looked lived in, but no people, no footprints, no exit paths. The temple had no rear door, no ventilation shafts, no tunnels, just that one entrance seal from the outside. They checked the carbon dating. On the items inside, the candle, the herbs, even the clay, all were less than a decade old. But the stone, the walls of a chamber carved over 3,000 years ago. They checked again. The results didn't change. The mystery deepened when they examined the carvings. The script didn't match any known ancient language. Not Hittite, not Sumerian, not Luwian. The symbols were geometric, almost alien. Worse, the temple disappeared. Not metaphorically, literally. When the team returned the next morning, the entrance they'd cleared had resealed. The limestone wall was back in place, solid, natural, as if untouched. Their tools were gone. No signs of excavation remained. They called in a geologist who confirmed the rock face showed no signs of tampering, no recent breaks, just a solid cliff millions of years old. The photographs they took blurry, distorted. Several were corrupted entirely. Only one image remained, a dim interior shot showing the altar, the bowl, and the eye motif glowing faintly in the camera. Flash. That photo was later misplaced. No known copy survives. Word spread in local circles among historians, geologists, even mystics. Some called it a time slip. Others believed it was a pocket dimension, an ancient sanctuary that phases in and out of reality, a temple for those no longer part of the world. One theory stood out. A retired archaeologist pointed to an obscure Anatolian myth, one never written down, passed only in oral tradition. It spoke of a watching place, a sacred room that revealed itself only to those who didn't seek it, a sanctuary where worshippers vanished willingly, giving themselves to something older than gods. It was called Anula, the Still Eye. According to the myth, the temple would appear in times of imbalance, offering refuge. But those who entered never returned, not because they were trapped, but because they chose to remain. And once the last worshipper made their choice, the temple would vanish, sealing itself for another 1,000 years. It was said that those inside didn't die. They simply became part of the stillness, held in suspension, like memory, like breath before speech. It's just a story, of course, but those who have searched for the site since, they never find it again. Not the cliff, not the path, not even the trees look the same. Only the silence remains. And sometimes when the wind brushes through the valley just right, people say they hear chanting, very faint, very old, like a voice repeating names that no longer exist in any language. The bell that rang alone in the misty valleys of Shei Prefecture, Japan. There's a slope where the sun touches the earth in golden silence. Morning fog clings to cedar branches. The air feels paused, like something ancient still lingers in the soil. Here on a farm long forgotten by maps, something strange was unearthed. A bell made of bronze, buried beneath layers of soil and clay, wrapped in woven cloth that had turned to dust. It wasn't massive, just shoulder high, but it was dense with strange ridges across its body, patterns unlike those found on other traditional Japanese temple bells. It had no known markings, no family crest, no temple name, just one smooth, circular ring near the base that shimmered faintly when touched. The farmer who found it didn't think much of it at first. He thought it might be scrap metal, old war debris. Maybe, but when he struck it just once with the back of his hand, it sang a soft, low note that hummed like breath through a bamboo flute. And then the sound didn't stop. It kept ringing long after his hand had left it. The vibration lingered in the field like fog. Even birds paused in their flight. The bell was taken to a local temple for safekeeping. There, the monks noticed something stranger. Each morning, just as the first ray of sunlight touched the bell's rim, it rang again by itself. Soft, single, always the same note. At first, they believed it might be the metal contracting in the cold. But no other bell did this. And this one, it rang even when it was warm, even indoors, even covered. Always at sunrise, never at sunset. News spread quietly. The bell was examined by metallurgists. They found that its bronze had unusually high traces of tin, more than any known Japanese bell from that era, and tiny hairline channels ran through the metal, almost like veins. They said the bell shouldn't resonate like it did. It was too thick, too unevenly cast. It shouldn't ring, and certainly not on its own. But it did. Every morning, one soft note, like a voice calling something or someone. The strangest part came later. A historian from Kyoto connected it to an obscure 9th century record, an entry, from a lost temple that once stood in the same valley. The record spoke of Sun Bell, forged by monks who followed no emperor. The monks believed that sound was sacred, not words, not chants, just vibration. They built the bell not to call people, but to greet the light. According to the scroll, only 12 such bells were ever made. 11 were lost to fire, flood, or war. One was never accounted for. This bell had no handle, no striker, no chain. It wasn't meant to be rung by hand. It was meant to wait. The temple that once housed it had no shrine, no statues, just open air and silence. The bell was the offering. Its note was the prayer. The villagers over time began to fear it. They whispered that when the bell sang, something listened to that no one who stayed near it for long remained the same. The monks moved it deeper into the hills beyond the reach of roads. They placed it on a wooden platform beneath the open sky, and still it rang. Every morning, even now, hikers say they've heard it just as dawn breaks. A soft note carried on the breeze, though no temple stands. Some say it's the earth breathing. Others believe it's a clock of a different kind. A calendar not of time, but of presence. That each tone marks the moment the world wakes. Not just the sun, but something older, something that forgets until reminded. No one guards a bell now. No ropes around it. No signs mark the trail, but those who find it almost always say the same thing. It doesn't look like it belongs here. The moss around its base never grows too close. The wood platform never rots. And when you stand near it, just before sunrise, the air feels heavier. Still, like you've entered the breath between dreams and memory. And when the bell rings again, just one quiet note, it doesn't sound like metal. It sounds like something remembering your name. The River of Teeth. There's a riverbed in central Kazakhstan. Dry now, silent. Its winding path stretches through a plain where the wind doesn't howl. It whispers. Nothing blooms here anymore. Just dust, fractured stones, and time. Locals call it Zubna, the River of Teeth. Not because of myth or metaphor, but because the ground is covered in them. Teeth. Thousands. Fossilized. Ancient, sharp, and worn. Some are small, molar fragments of unknown mammals. Others are massive, curved, ridged, belonging to creatures long vanished. The riverbed has no bones, no skulls, just teeth, only teeth. It was first stumbled upon in the 1980s by a team of geologists surveying soil erosion. They noticed something strange about the way the sediment shifted in. The midday sun, reflections scattered like glass. When they dug, they didn't find minerals. They found fangs. Hundreds. Since then, the area has been visited by paleontologists, archaeologists, even folklore researchers. No one agrees on what this place is because there is no other like it. No nearby burial site. No fossil layer running through the region. Just a long, dry riverbed filled with nothing but ancient teeth and none from the same species. Bison teeth, camel, horse, saber-tooth, even teeth from deep sea. Predators, sharks that should have died oceans away. There's no pattern, only presence. One theory suggests the river was once a migration road, that animals died here again and again over thousands of years. But where are their bones? Bones decay. Teeth remain, but never like this. Another theory. The river was sacred, used by an unknown culture to cast offerings, perhaps to a god of death or a guardian of water. The people left no writing, no tools, no symbols, just teeth. When carbon dating was attempted on residue in the soil, the results came back conflicting. Some teeth were 50,000 years old, others only 7,000. That's a span too wide to explain by natural fossil drift. It's as if the teeth were collected over time from different animals from different places and brought here, placed deliberately. Some are arranged in rows, others in spirals. A few set neatly into lines as if part of something larger, now long gone. The locals won't go near the river at night. They say dogs refuse to walk across it, that the wind changes when you cross the old banks, and that if you step on the wrong spot, you can hear something beneath the dirt, a crunch. Some even say the teeth grow back. Every few years, more found. New ones shoved upward by frost or cracked from deeper below. Even when carefully cleared, the surface doesn't stay clean for long, as if the earth is giving them back. A Kazakh elder once said, "These are not the teeth of animals. They're the teeth of memories." This land remembers every bite it ever took. It's poetic but unnerving. Because if this river does remember, what else does it hold? There's a section about 40 m wide where the teeth glow faintly under ultraviolet light. Scientists say it's due to phosphate deposits, but others say this stretch feels different. The air here is cooler, heavier, and people report headaches, nausea. Some say they hear low growls, just beneath the threshold of hearing, a rhythm like distant chewing. To date, no full skeleton has ever been found nearby, just more teeth, and they keep coming. Like the river is still flowing underneath, not with water, but with something older. There's a final theory, one rarely spoken aloud, that the River of Teeth isn't a graveyard at all, that it's a warning, something that fed here or lives beneath. And all these teeth, they're not remnants, they're remains, leftovers. You can walk across this riverbed if you dare. Hundreds of meters wide, cracked soil. You'll feel the crunch beneath your boots. You'll wonder if you've stepped into a place the world tried to forget. And as the sun sets and shadows stretch like fingers across the sand, You might stop. You might listen. Who lost all these teeth? And why does the ground seem hungry for more? The sky chamber high in the mountains of northern Peru, where the air turns thin and the clouds move like ghosts. There sits a room, not a ruin, not quite a temple, just a room. No roof, for stone walls. No doorway, no path leading in, no stairs, no signs of how it was built or how anyone entered. And yet it exists, balanced at the edge of a cliff, 3,000 m above sea level. They call it the Sky Chamber, discovered only in 2007. It doesn't appear on maps. It wasn't known to locals. No name, no legend, just stone, wind, and mystery. From above, it looks almost perfect. A square, maybe 4 meters x 4, walls built of solid slabs, ancient, eroded but fitted tightly, still standing after centuries of storms and shifting earth. But the strange part isn't just that it's isolated. It's that it's unreachable. The chamber sits on a shelf of rock, too narrow to climb. Helicopter scans confirmed. No tunnels beneath, no passages through the cliff. No human could reach it without modern gear. And yet inside lie objects. 3 stone bowls positioned neatly in a triangle. One small pile of ash, old, undisturbed, and carved faintly into the floor. A symbol, a circle with 4 intersecting lines. No culture in this region used that symbol. Not the Cachapoa, not the Inca, not even the older, forgotten ones. And yet here it is, etched deeply, like a compass pointing in every direction at once. Who carved it? How did they get in? Some believe it was a ceremonial space, an offering chamber, a place to honor the stars. Clatter, all the walls are low, only waist height, and the sky above is wide, unobstructed. Astronomers have noted something strange. Every solstice at sunrise, a shadow falls perfectly through the center of the chamber. A line of light that lands right on the ash pile. Coincidence? Maybe, but it feels intentional. It doesn't end there. On the outer edge of one wall, a groove runs downward like a channel, as if something liquid once flowed from inside, outward blood. Tests on the ash were inconclusive. No bones, no plant remains, just carbon burned. Ancient, and yet the wind never scattered it. It stayed, still stays. Climbers who've reached nearby ledges report strange sensations near the sky chamber, buzzing in their ears, tightness in the chest, as if the air thickens around it. One climber, a veteran alpinist from Ecuador, claimed the chamber made no echo. He shouted toward it, and the sound just stopped, not returned, not absorbed, gone. Others describe hearing faint hums at dusk, low, rhythmic like breathing, not mechanical, not imagined, just there. Local elders don't speak of it. When shown photos, they grow quiet. One simply said, "It's not for us." No one has managed to step inside. Drones can film it. Lyre can scan it. But the stones remain untouched, cold. Patient theories stretch wide. Some suggest it's the remains of a celestial observatory. Others believe it's a sky tomb, a symbolic burial for someone important or something. A few believe it was never meant to be entered, that it was sealed from the start, built for watching, not using. A place where eyes met stars, where someone waited or listened. There's even one theory, more fringe, that says the chamber is not as old as we think, that it appears and disappears, that it's not built on the mountain, but from it, that it's part of the stone itself. A momentary anomaly, a glitch. The stone bowls inside, they've never changed position in any photo. The ash is never scattered. The mark on the floor, never worn. Some believe it's still in use. Not by us, by something else. A place to speak to the sky or wait for an answer. You can stand near it now if you're brave enough to climb, but you won't get in. You'll see the walls. You'll feel the wind. You'll hear nothing. Only the silence of altitude and the press of something old, watching from above. Not threatening, not angry, just waiting. A room without a door. A symbol no one understands. A chamber closer to the stars than to us. And the question still remains. If no one could enter, who built it from the inside? The mural in the mist. There is a temple in northern Laos, deep in a forest where the morning fog moves like smoke across ancient stones. It sits halfway up a moss-covered hill. Its steps cracked and crooked. Its roof long collapsed. Most who pass it by don't even notice anything strange. To them, it's just another forgotten ruin, weathered by rain, smothered by vines. But if you happen to be standing there just before sunrise on a day when the air is thick and the mist is heavy, you might see something else. Not carved, not etched, but painted. A mural only visible in the fog. It stretches across the temple's inner wall where the stone is worn smooth. At first it's faint, just shadows in the mist, but then it sharpens, colors blooming softly from the dampness. Golds, reds, deep indigo blue, figures, symbols, eyes. Then as the fog lifts, it fades like it was never there. Locals call it Nafka, the mist image. The first record of the phenomenon was made in 1968 by a French botanist surveying the area for medicinal plants. He saw what he thought was a fresco, but when he returned later that afternoon with his guide, the wall was bare. Only the faint outlines of lichen and old rainfall, he wrote in his journal. It was as if the temple painted itself with the dawn. Since then, researchers have tried to study the effect. They set up cameras, but no image ever appears on film. They measured the wall. No change in temperature. They ran scans. No pigment. It's as if the mural is only visible to the human eye. One theory says it's an optical illusion that moisture from the mist activates certain minerals in the stone, causing refraction, bending the light into color. Another theory suggests biological trickery, a type of fungus or microscopic moss that reacts to humidity in complex patterns. But even then, no one can explain the shapes. The figures in the murals seem to move, not literally, but from one viewing to the next. One researcher drew what she saw: 3 robed figures holding curved blades. Another a week later saw 7. No weapons, just eyes closed. A monk from a nearby village said the mural is not a warning, but a memory, a moment frozen in fog. He said it shows what the temple wants to remember. The temple itself is strange. There are no records of it in regional histories. Its stones don't match local quarries, and the style of construction is mixed. Lao Khmer, even hints of Chinese influence, as if different builders came from different times and then left together. The mural wall is the only smooth surface. Every other stone is rough, chipped, weathered, but not that one. Not even moss grows on it. Not even insects touch it. Locals avoid the place after sunrise. They say the mural knows you, that it changes depending on who's watching. One tourist swore she saw herself in the painting older. Another claimed the eyes in the mural opened only when he stepped close just enough to see the whites, just enough to turn away. These are stories, of course, anecdotes, but in every version the theme is the same. The mural is alive, a breathless, kind of alive, not thinking, not moving, but aware. One theory goes further, that the mural is not painted on the wall, but within it. That it's embedded in layers only revealed when the temperature and light are perfect, like a stone-based ink, thousands of years old. Advanced chemistry beyond what we've seen from this region. But if that were true, who created it? And why? Hide it in mist? Some believe the mural is a celestial map, that the figures represent constellations, that the colors are coded messages only visible to those who know the sky. One researcher lined up the mural's shape with ancient laos and star charts and found a match. A rare planetary alignment set to occur only once every 12,000 years. Is that what it's waiting for? Others believe it's religious, a forgotten sect, worshipping mist itself, praying to breath and vapor, believing that truth lives not in stone or word, but in the in-between, the invisible, the nearly there. And maybe that's why the mural stays hidden, because it's not meant for everyone, just those who arrive quietly without cameras, without expectation, just breath, fog, and time. If you go there, you might see it, you might not, but you'll feel something. The way the air shifts, the way silence wraps around you, gentle but firm. You'll stand there watching a blank wall, and maybe, just maybe, you'll see color bloom where no color should be. And when it fades, you'll wonder if it was ever real, if you dreamed it, if the temple was remembering or revealing. Because some stories don't live in books or bones. They live in mist, and they vanish when the world gets too loud. The forest that watches. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, where the canopy swallows sunlight and the air feels heavy with memory, there's a place where people rarely walk, not because it is too remote, but because of what watches from the trees. Locals call it Mata dos Olhos Vejos, the forest of hollow eyes. The name comes from the statues, dozens of them carved from a dark bark-like stone worn smooth by rain and time, and placed in scattered, unpredictable patterns. They have no mouths, no noses, just wide, round, empty eye sockets as if they were made to see but not to speak. The statues vary in height. Some are no taller than a child. Others rise taller than a man. But every single one faces inward toward the dense heart of the forest. No one knows who made them. No known Amazonian culture used stone like this. No roads lead to them. No tools. No camps. No ruins, just the statues standing in silence, as if listening for something beneath the leaves. The first outsider to document them was a field researcher in 1972. He was studying rare plant species near the Purus River when he noticed them. 4 stone figures in a clearing aligned in a near-perfect square. He took photographs, but when he returned a week later, the statues had changed. Same clearing, same number, but different poses. He never went back. The photos were published years later, and that's when the stories started to emerge. Not from historians, but from the people who already knew. The tribes nearby avoid the area. They call it the listening forest, a place where the trees remember, where stone eyes see more than sight. One elder said they're not watching the forest. They're watching what's under it. No one has dared dig there. Not officially, not deeply. But in 1999, a drone survey team captured something strange. A formation beneath the surface. Not ruins, not foundations, but hollows. Like a network of tunnels or chambers less than 10 m below the forest floor. The ground there is different. Softer, cooler, and oddly quiet. Even the insects seem to avoid it. Some statues are chipped, but they don't crumble. Geologists who examined them couldn't identify the stone. It doesn't match anything in the region. No signs of quarrying, no tool marks. It's as if the statues simply appeared. But there are clues. One statue was found partially buried with a faint carving on the base. Not a word, but a spiral. Just one, perfectly etched. A symbol that appears in other ancient cultures around the world. A sign of cycles, of return, of something that doesn't end. The statues share a trait. Their eye sockets always point toward the forest center. If you map them all, they form a loose ring, a quiet circle around something no one could see. Expeditions have tried to go deeper, but their equipment malfunctions. GPS cuts out. Compasses spin. One group lost contact for 2 days. When they were found, they were unharmed but silent, refused to speak of what they saw. One member eventually wrote in a private journal. It wasn't a forest. It was waiting. The eyes don't follow you. They call you in. There are theories. Some believe the statues were left by a lost civilization. One with no name, no language, that lived in the Amazon before it became what it is now. A people who believed something sacred or dangerous was buried deep in the ground. Others believe the statues are warnings placed like guardians not to keep something out, but to keep something in. Some think they mark burial grounds, mass graves, ritual sites, but the soil shows no sign of bodies, no ashes, only roots and the deep stillness of the forest. And still they stand, unblinking, unmoving. Dozens of eyes carved in silence, gazing into a place where even sunlight hesitates. They're not beautiful, they're not grand, but they're unforgettable. People who visit say they feel watched, not in fear, but in sadness. As if the statues are remembering, as if they once knew what the forest was and missed what was lost. What are they guarding? What are they still waiting for? No one knows. But when the mist creeps through the trees and the forest grows quiet, the statues almost seem to lean. Not physically, but emotionally, like they're listening, like they expect something to return. And until then, they watch the road to nowhere. In the windswept steppes of Mongolia, where the land stretches endlessly, and clouds move like slow ships overhead. There's a road, a forgotten road built from stone, straight as a line drawn by a steady hand, and quiet as the earth beneath it. It doesn't lead to a city. It doesn't lead to a temple. It doesn't even curve. It simply goes. For nearly 14 kilometers, this path winds through nothing. No villages, no ruins, just grasslands, dust, and silence. And then it stops. Not in ruin, not in erosion, but at a wall, a flat, blank, featureless stone wall. There are no doors in the wall, no carvings, no symbols, only a cold, dark surface that meets the road and says nothing. It's called Sagazanzam by the local herders, the White Road. Not for its color, but for the way it stands out against the land, like a scar across time. The road was first noted in detail by a Soviet geological team in the 1960s. They had no reason to follow it until they noticed its stones didn't match the surrounding region. The road is built from polished basalt, dark volcanic stone, dense, heavy, and not from this area. To bring this much stone to this location, miles from any known ancient quarry would have taken generations. But for what? They followed the road, mapping it, measuring its straightness, which held true with almost impossible accuracy. Each segment was about 2 m wide, laid with perfectly fitted stones, as if crafted by hand rather than shaped by nature. And at the end, the wall 4 m high, 8 m across. A single monolith planted into the earth like a marker, but it marked nothing. There are no inscriptions, no runes, no paint. The team took samples of the stone. It came from a region nearly 200 kilometers away. Volcanic material from the ancient lava. Fields of the Gobi. So the road and the wall were not accidents. They were placed carefully, deliberately. But why? No known Mongolian dynasty claimed it. It predates the Mongol Empire. And even the local shamans only say it is a road for something that has not yet come. Strange things happen near the road. Animals avoid walking on it. Birds never perch on the stones. And compasses misbehave. People who follow the road alone report odd feelings like they're being pulled forward, as if something at the end is calling. But there's nothing there, just the wall, and yet it doesn't feel empty. It feels paused, like something meant to be there hasn't arrived yet, or it left long ago. Some archaeologists suggest it might have been a ceremonial path, a pilgrimage route, a final journey for the dead. But no bones have been found, no ash, no tombs. Others believe it's older than we realize, much older, older than the grass, older than the steppe settlements, older than even written language in the region. Satellite scans suggest that. Beneath the road, there are anchors, large stone columns buried into the soil, holding the path in place through centuries of erosion and weather. There was much just a trail. It was meant to last. Still, it leads nowhere. One theory proposes the wall wasn't the end. It was a gate. That at one point it opened. That something once came through it or went in. A portal. Not in the science fiction sense, but in a cultural one, a crossing place, a threshold. But the question remains, why build a road? With no destination? Locals have their own stories. They say that if you walk the road at night, you'll hear footsteps behind you. Slow, measured, following your pace, never catching up, never falling behind. If you turn, there's no one there. But the feeling doesn't leave. Someone tried to dig near the wall. After a few meters, they always stop. They say the ground vibrates just a little, as if warning them not to go deeper. There's no proof, only whispers. And a road, a perfect road untouched by time, leading across a forgotten landscape to a blank wall that waits without answer. We don't know who built it. We don't know when, we don't know why, but it's still there, stretching through emptiness like a memory, trying to be remembered too. And if you walk it, you may find yourself wondering not what's at the end, but what was once behind the wall and why it was sealed forever. Village of Mirrors. In the hills of northern Iran, where the nights are colder than the silence that fills them, there lies a place so forgotten it doesn't appear on most maps. The locals call it AD, the Village of Mirrors. At first glance, it looks like any other abandoned site. Crumbled homes, collapsed roofs, dust-covered stones. But when the sun sets and night blankets the valley, the ground begins to shimmer as if the ruins themselves are staring back at the stars. Because every surface, walls, paths, wells is covered in polished stone, smooth, cold, and oddly reflective. Not like modern mirrors, but like obsidian or dark glass. The kind that catches light but doesn't give it back easily. The phenomenon puzzled archaeologists for decades who would build a village entirely of polished surfaces, and more importantly, why. The first documented visit was in 1935 by a Persian geographer mapping forgotten highland trails. He described it as a place that does not absorb light, only reflects it back into the heavens. That line would stick with explorers for generations. The village was estimated to be over 1,200 years old. But strangely, no records, no scrolls, no. Local folklore spoke of anyone ever living there. No furniture, no tools, just rooms. Rooms made of smooth, obsidian-like stone that reflects the night sky. At its center lies a square courtyard, exactly 12 m x 12. No plants grow in the square. No animals enter it. And yet the temperature inside that courtyard is always 5 degrees cooler than the rest of the village. Even in summer, visitors have noticed strange sensations here. The feeling of being watched, not by people, but by the village itself. Some say if you stand in the courtyard at midnight during the new moon, the stars above will appear clearer, as if the mirrors around you enhance the sky. Astronomers who visited the site confirm that the reflections of constellations on the stone are unusually accurate. Even when cloud cover blocks the real stars above, it's as if the stones remember the night sky and display it anyway. No one knows where the stones came from. They are not native to the region. Samples tested in European labs suggest the material is a form of volcanic glass, but mixed with compounds not typically found in natural obsidian. Some say they were polished by hand. Others argue they were poured, melted, shaped, and cooled in place. But that kind of technology shouldn't have existed in this region at the time. In one of the remaining structures, a room with no ceiling, archaeologists discovered a strange artifact, a stone basin filled with a black mirror-like liquid. The basin has no cracks, no drainage. And yet, even after decades of exposure, the liquid never evaporates. It just remains still, reflecting everything except the person looking into it. Try to see your reflection and you'll see the sky behind you. Always the sky, never your face. Locals avoid the site entirely. They say it's cursed that people who stay past midnight hear their names whispered in a glass, that sometimes shadows move in the reflections when nothing moves around them. But no one has been harmed. No missing persons, no violent history, just a discomfort, a sense that the village sees more than it should. One theory suggests the entire site was an ancient observatory, not for charting stars, but for watching something else, because the walls don't just reflect the sky. They reflect very specific stars. Some sections only show one constellation, no matter where you stand. Others seem to mirror star patterns that no longer exist in our skies. Star maps found at the site suggest that whoever lived here, if anyone ever did, tracked the slow movement of stars over thousands of years. Stars we no longer see. Systems that no longer shine. It's as if the village of mirrors is not for us to see the stars, but for the stars to see us. The more you walk through it, the more it begins to feel not abandoned, but waiting. Waiting for the right sky. Waiting for something to return or awaken. Even today, during satellite passes, the village shows up on thermal scans, glowing faintly in patterns, almost like it's responding to the heat of the machines above. No explanation has been confirmed. The site has been closed off multiple times, not for safety, but because researchers claim their equipment malfunctions near the courtyard. Cameras fog, lenses crack, GPS freezes, yet the stones remain cold, precise, reflective. In a world full of ruins left behind, the village of mirrors is different. It's not speaking of the past. It feels like it's showing us a map, a message written in light and reflection, one that can only be read by those willing to look at the stars from the ground and wonder who might be looking back. The room with no door in the southern reaches of the Himalayas. Just beyond the mist-covered ridges of Bhutan, a temple sits carved into the mountainside, silent, weathered, and surrounded by legends. They call it the Temple of Still Breath. It's not large, not famous. There are no tourists, no gift shops, just worn stone steps leading into a narrow passage hugged by the mountain itself. For centuries, monks have tended to this place not as a destination, but as a boundary. Because inside this ancient sanctuary, there's something no one can explain. A room, a chamber, perfectly shaped, perfectly sealed. A room with no door, not locked, not blocked. There simply is no entrance, no break in the stone, no seam in the walls, no tunnel, no passage, no opening, just solid mountain and a single rectangular void detected behind it. It was first discovered by accident in the 1960s when a restoration team began scanning the temple walls to check for weak points after a landslide. One of their instruments picked up an unusual echo, a hollow space behind the main altar. The readings were clear, an enclosed chamber roughly 5 m wide, 8 m long, completely surrounded by rock on all sides. But the walls showed no sign of tampering. No ancient door filled in, no recent patchwork, just seamless stone, as if the room had been carved from within and then never opened. That's when the whispers began. Some said it was a monk's tomb. Others claimed it was a prison, not for someone but for something. The temple elders gave few answers. Tato. They only said it had always been there, that even the oldest scrolls mentioned the room with no door. They said it was not meant to be opened. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was finished. What that meant, no one could quite explain. In 1972, a small team of geologists requested permission to study the room using seismic imaging. After weeks of negotiations, the temple allowed it with strict conditions. No drilling, no breaking, just observation. The images they captured were haunting. Inside the sealed chamber stood what appeared to be a raised platform. Something rested on it. Rectangular, possibly a coffin or a chest or a stone box. Beside it, 4 upright shapes, too symmetrical to be natural, too slender to be columns, statues, or something else. 2 seemed wanted more time. But after just 3 days of scans, the monks ended the study politely, firmly, and the doors of the temple were closed again. To this day, no one has seen inside that room. But the mystery doesn't end there. Because over the decades, more anomalies began to surface. Every winter, as the snows fall heavy and silence the mountains, a low hum has been reported by those nearby. A tone soft, constant. It seems to emanate from the temple. Not loud, barely noticeable, but it starts at the same time every year and fades when spring returns. Tate, and always. The sound comes from the wall that hides the chamber. In the 1990s, infrared scans were attempted again. The results were stranger this time. The platform in the sealed room was warm, slightly, not hot, but warmer than the rock surrounding it. In a mountain temple that drops below, freezing with no access to sunlight, no technology, and no electricity. Something in that room holds heat. 2 A third expedition in 2003 sent ground-penetrating radar to map the mountain's internal structure. The sealed chamber was still there. House still untouched, but the 4 upright shapes had shifted. They were slightly closer to the platform than in previous scans. It was dismissed as data error software glitch, but the file remains. And researchers still argue over what it means. Some believe the room is a burial chamber, a highly sacred one meant to be sealed for eternity, that those inside were holy and their rest should never be disturbed. Others suggest it was ceremonial, a symbolic room built without an entrance to represent the unreachable. But others, a small, quiet group of theorists, believe the chamber wasn't sealed. It was never meant to be opened at all, because it's not about us going in. It's about something in there staying separate, not trapped, just waiting in silence, in stillness for a time not yet arrived or already passed. In 2017, A small tremor shook the region. Barely a blip on any seismic chart, but it cracked a corner of the temple's outer wall. Monks arrived within hours and sealed the damage immediately. Witnesses said they heard movement from within the mountain. Not rumbling, not stone shifting, but something deliberate, a scrape, a breath. Nothing has been confirmed. The temple remains closed to outsiders, though occasional pilgrims are still allowed to pray in its outer halls. And each year as winter falls and the hum begins again, those who visit the temple say it feels like the mountain itself is listening, not sleeping, listening. Because deep behind its carved stone, in a chamber with no door, something exists without entry, without exit, and perhaps without time. And maybe that's the point. Maybe some rooms aren't meant to be opened because what's inside was never meant to leave. The bridge in the fog, in the damp, quiet hills of northern Scotland, where the lochs are cold and deep, and the morning fog rolls in like breath over glass, there's a story older than any road. A tale spoken in half-whispers by shepherds, hikers, and the few locals who still believe the old things. They call it the bridge in the fog. It only appears at dawn. Not always, just some mornings when the sky is pale gray and the mist is thick enough to hide the world. It isn't on any map. It has no markings, no signs, no paved road leading to it. But those who've seen it swear it's real. A narrow stone bridge arching over a shallow ravine that shouldn't be there. The stones are wet and black, worn smooth by centuries of weather, but not broken. No moss, no cracks as if they were placed yesterday. And then, as the sun rises, it disappears. Not slowly, not in pieces, just gone, vanished into the fog. And with it, the ravine below. What's stranger still is that those who've walked across it never feel the slope of the ground change. Some say the air goes colder. Others say it gets quiet. No birds, no wind, just the sound of your own steps and the faint echo of water you never see. But every story ends the same. You reach the other side, and when you look back, the bridge is no longer there. Only grass and mist and an odd chill that doesn't leave your bones for hours. The first written account of the bridge in the fog comes from 1831. A traveler named Elliot Winmar was documenting strange natural phenomena in the Highlands. In his journal, he wrote, "I crossed a narrow stone bridge that I had not seen marked on any surveyor's chart. It appeared at the base of a low ridge beneath heavy mist. Upon turning back, not 10 paces later it was gone. The land was flat and empty. I was entirely sober." He called it a road between mornings. But he wasn't the last to find it. In the decades that followed, dozens of similar sightings emerged, all describing the same thing. A short arched bridge made of polished dark stone appearing only at sunrise and only in the fog. Some tried to find it again. They brought surveyors, scientists, even priests, but none saw it twice. One theory suggests it's an illusion, a trick of light and fog on the wet landscape. Another proposes that the area sits on a thin patch of Earth's crust where magnetic interference plays with the senses. But then there's the story of Owen Clark. In 1978, he vanished for 3 days. A local forester used to the terrain. His disappearance triggered a major search. When he returned, he was barefoot, drenched in morning dew, and silent. He told only one story, that he had crossed a bridge he didn't remember finding in a place he didn't recognize. He claimed there was a village on the other side. Quiet stone built with no smoke, no people, but warm fires still glowing in the hearths. He stayed there wandering, calling out, seeing no one, hearing only faint music like flutes in the trees. When he tried to leave, the bridge was gone. He waited for 2 days, he said, until the fog came again, and then the bridge returned, but he never found the village again. He stopped speaking about it altogether. Some locals said he was mad. Others believed he had gone somewhere real, but not quite here. And then there's the matter of the sheep. Twice in the past decade, entire flocks have been found wandering alone in the fields near the site with their hooves wet and flecks of dark stone stuck between them. But the surrounding area is dry. No recent rain, no bridges made of that kind of stone anywhere within miles. Geologists examined the flecks. The stone wasn't local. It resembled basalt, but with strange inclusions, tiny silver-like threads running through the grain. Too uniform for a natural pattern. Where the stone came from, no one knows, but it matches the few photographs that have been taken. Only two exist, blurry, taken just as the mist began to clear. One shows the bridge faintly, an outline more than a shape, its arch reflecting pale light from a dawn sky. The other is stranger. It was taken by a hiker in 2009. It shows nothing until the image is enhanced. Then in the mist at the center of the frame, a figure becomes visible, just barely standing on what appears to be the bridge, too distant to make out clearly. No details, no face, but arms outstretched, as if reaching for something on the other side. The hiker didn't see anyone when the photo was taken. They were alone, they said, completely alone. To this day, no one has found the foundation of the bridge. No stones in the earth, no ruins, no road, just soft earth, dew-covered grass, and the thick curling fog that comes at dawn. Maybe the bridge is a memory, a leftover from something older than time can hold on to. Or maybe it's a crossing, not for us, but for something else, something that walks only when the light is soft and the mist hides the edges of the world. Whatever it is, it leaves nothing behind. No tracks, no marks, just questions and stories and the silence of the hills after sunrise. So if you ever find yourself in the highlands at dawn and the fog wraps the earth like a veil, look closely. You might see stone beneath your feet where there should be none. You might feel cold where there is no wind. And if you see a bridge where there was none before, be careful, because if you cross it, you may not come back the same or come back at all. The idol in the ice deep in the frozen spine of the Himalayas, where snow doesn't melt and silence never breaks. A glacier cracked open. It wasn't loud, just a soft groan. A shift in pressure, the kind of mountains make when they're moving in their sleep. But what it revealed that morning wasn't ice. Not rock, not a body. A figure, an idol carved from black stone, trapped within. The ice, face forward, hands together, watching. It shouldn't have been there. At that altitude, no humans lived. No temples were ever built. No worshippers ever reached that high. But it was real. The team who found it weren't explorers or archaeologists. They were geologists surveying the retreat of the glacier. One of them, a man named Dr. Rijit Banerjee, first spotted the shape half buried, frozen for who knows how long. He thought it was a rock at first, but then he saw the hands, fingers pressed together, perfectly symmetrical, too perfect for nature to form. They dug it out slowly. It took 3 days using only warm water, because any sudden change in temperature could crack the ice. What emerged was a statue about 4 feet tall, heavier than expected, made of a stone no one could immediately identify. Black, but not obsidian, polished, but not worn. It looked new. That was the first mystery. No erosion, no cracks, no discoloration from the ice. Nothing about it had aged, even though it had clearly been frozen for centuries, maybe longer. It was a man or something like one. Humanoid, yes, but not quite right. The proportions were unsettling, arms too long, eyes too wide, lips curled in an expression neither calm nor cruel, just still too. But the most disturbing thing, the warmth. When they finally removed it, the idol felt warm to the touch despite being buried in sub-zero ice. For centuries, the stone didn't hold the cold. Dr. Burgee touched it barehanded. He said it felt like holding skin. Alive. They took it down the mountain. Photos were taken. Samples collected, but none of it helped. The stone wasn't from the Himalayas. In fact, it wasn't from anywhere local. Geologists couldn't match its composition to any known formation in the region. A volcanic origin maybe, but the nearest volcanoes were hundreds of miles away. Then came the carvings. They weren't obvious at first, but under infrared light, tiny inscriptions were found on the back of the statue, etched so finely they were nearly invisible. No known script, no symbols matching any ancient language. But the lines repeated, like a code, something recursive, a message meant to be hidden or maybe never read. Linguists called in from Delhi couldn't decipher it. But one pattern stood out. a sequence of 7 identical characters always appearing beneath the figure's hands. Some speculated it was a name, others thought it was a warning. And then the dreams began. Of the 5 researchers who handled the idol, 3 reported vivid, identical nightmares. They described a black valley, no stars, no sky, just endless shadow. And in the center, the idol standing, waiting. They heard whispers, felt cold that didn't come from around them, but from inside them. They said they woke up feeling watched. 2 of them refused to work on the statue afterward. 1 left the research project entirely. Still, the idol remained. It was moved to a secure facility in Leh, kept under constant observation, and that's when the ice started to return. Literally ice forming on the glass of its display. Even though the room was heated, humidity sensors stayed normal. No other surface froze. Only the idol, the glass, would fog. The temperature near would drop by 2 or 3 degrees, even if the rest of the lab stayed warm. Eventually, they turned the heating system toward the idol. It didn't help. The cold clung to it, not spreading, just sitting there around it like a field. Some scientists thought it was natural. Others weren't so sure. A local lama was invited to see it. He refused to enter the room, said the idol did not belong there, said it was not made by hands. He called it drow, a word that roughly translates to silent watcher in his dialect. He left without touching it. Later that week, he returned and left a small bundle of herbs at the facility gate. No note, just herbs burned for the dead. Eventually, interest in the idol faded. It wasn't announced to the public. No press releases. No museums took it. It sits now in a cold storage archive listed under a code name, Ice Figure 001. No one goes near it, and the fog still forms just before dawn. Why was it in a glacier? Who put it there? What was it watching? We may never know, but the strangest thing, a second one was found in Greenland. Same size, same features, same stone. The hands just slightly different. Together, they seem to be making a gesture like 2 pieces of a word. A phrase, a message. But the second idol has also gone silent, just like the one in the ice. And sometimes in the very early morning, security cameras still catch a flicker in a frost, as if the statue shifts just slightly when no one's watching. A tower with no top. In the heart of the Anatolian mountains, there's a structure so old, so strange, and so misunderstood that locals refuse to speak of it after sunset. They call it the needle of the earth. To the untrained eye, it looks like just another jagged outcrop rising from the valley floor. But to those who've studied it up close, it's not a mountain. It's something else. A man-made shaft, a tower. But here's the impossible part. It doesn't go up. It goes down. Only the bottom of the spire is visible above ground. Just a stub of worn, carved stone covered in ancient lichen. A few odd symbols are etched into its surface. Unknown, faint, and almost erased by time. Archaeologists assumed it was a ceremonial pillar when it was first recorded in the early 1900s, nothing more. But then, ground-penetrating radar revealed something terrifyingly different. This was no surface monument. Beneath the visible fragment, the stone structure plunged directly into the earth for over 300 m. A single vertical shaft, smooth, uniform, and uninterrupted. And the instruments couldn't find an end. The tower continued downward, deeper than their equipment could scan. It was inverted, a spire buried upside down. There are no stairs, no tunnels, no visible access at all. And yet, the structure wasn't just a solid column. Deeper scans showed narrow chambers branching off the shaft at regular intervals, like small rooms carved into the outer edge of the spire as it descended, but no one could reach them. The stone was harder than granite, resistant to modern drilling. Several excavation attempts failed, tools sapped, machinery overheated. Eventually, the government deemed the site too dangerous and too expensive to pursue further. They sealed the top with a protective dome and left it alone. But researchers kept coming quietly, independently, obsessed. One of them, a Turkish historian named Isa Yilmaz, spent over 15 years studying the tower and the ancient myths surrounding it. She wasn't just searching for architecture. She was chasing a story, one that went back thousands of years. buried in scattered texts and oral traditions. According to a rare 12 STR century manuscript found in a monastery nearby, the tower was once described as the root of heaven, a structure believed to have connected the realms above and below, but not for climbing. It was meant to anchor something. ISA's theory was disturbing. She proposed that the spire wasn't designed for humans at all. It wasn't a temple. It was a prison or perhaps a tether. Something ancient, dangerous, or sacred, buried so deeply and sealed so tightly that not even time could touch it. The carvings on the outer portion, once deciphered partially, referenced keeping what rises held fast. In other words, whatever the tower was made for, it wasn't to let something in. It was to keep something from getting out. There were other signs, too. Small magnetic anomalies near the base. Animals refusing to go near the site. Compass needles spinning without cause. Locals told stories of voices carried on the wind from the sealed dome at night. Low, steady whispers. None of it was provable, but none of it ever stopped either. In 2014, a private expedition tried one last deep scan using high-powered sonar and seismic readings. The data they returned showed that the shaft continued at least another 800 m underground. Still straight, still symmetrical, still ending in nothing. No cap, no foundation, no final room. Just more stone, more shaft vanishing deeper into the crust. And then the instruments stopped working. Some blamed electromagnetic interference. Others weren't so sure. One technician said he saw a brief spike, an upward echo, as if something far below had moved. The data was inconclusive. The project shut down. The records were sealed. To this day, the tower remains untouched. Its tip, if there is one, has never been found. It sits beneath the earth like a needle pushed through layers of time. Origin unknown. Purpose forgotten. But if you stand near at the right hour, when the air is still and the light is low, you might hear vibration under your feet. Faint, deep, rhythmic, almost like breathing. And the locals, they still won't talk about it. Not out loud, not after dark, because they say the tower doesn't just reach deep into the ground, it listens. And one day, whatever it's holding may stop listening back. The lost city of Kalahari. In the heart of southern Africa, there lies a vast, silent desert stretching endlessly across Namibia, Botswana, and South Africa. The Kalahari, hot, dry, and empty, or so most believe. But beneath the rust-colored sands and whispering winds, something stirs. Not movement, not sound, but a question. A question that has lingered for over 100 years. Could there be an ancient city buried beneath the dunes? This is not just a tale. It's not just local legend. It's a mystery sparked by real people, explorers, maps, and strange ruins seen once, then never again. They call it the lost city of the Kalahari, and no one has ever found it again. The story begins in the 1880s with a Canadian explorer named William Leonard Hunt. But most didn't know him by that name. He performed under the stage name the Great Feeney, a tightrope walker, a performer, and later an adventurer. Feeney traveled to Africa seeking spectacle. But what he returned with was something far more curious. In 1885, after a trek across the Kalahari Desert, he presented a strange report to the Royal Geographical Society in London. He spoke of ruins, massive ones, half-buried stone walls, an archway, and fragments of what appeared to be a road or causeway laid out on a winding path. Not natural rock formations, he claimed, not erosion. These were man-made, old, weathered, and forgotten. Feeney called a lost city, but he couldn't return to it. He had no exact coordinates, only rough sketches and a description that grew fuzzier the more he repeated it. Some doubted him immediately. Was it an exaggeration? Was it just heat and exhaustion making stone look like ruins? But others were intrigued. Over the next several decades, explorers, adventurers, and archaeologists returned to the Kalahari, hoping to see what Feeney had seen. They found rocks, sand, sky, but never a city. Some claimed the walls were simply dolerite formations, natural though often deceiving. Others believed that the desert had shifted, that dunes had rolled over the ruins like waves over a shipwreck. The local people, especially the sand tribes, spoke of old things, not ruins exactly, but places. Places no one went anymore, because they were cursed or because no one came back. Then came the maps, old ones, sketches showing strange rectangular shapes in the middle of nowhere, too perfect to be coincidence, and yet too uncertain to trust. One explorer swore he saw pillars poking from the sand during a sandstorm. Another reported symmetrical stone paths that went on for meters, then disappeared, but again, no proof. And that, in a way, is what makes the mystery so powerful. No ruins, no inscriptions, no evidence, only stories. A few old sketches and a deep, persistent sense that something is hidden where no one wants to look. Could a city have existed here? It's not impossible. Long ago, the Kalahari was greener, wetter. Satellite images even show dried riverbeds, ancient lakes. People may have settled here thousands of years ago before the desert swallowed everything. And if so, maybe there was a city, a ceremonial site, a fortress, not a city like Cairo or Rome, but something older, simpler, a sacred place lost to time. In recent years, modern technology has scanned the Kalahari from above. Drones, satellites, LAR, but the desert guards its secrets. Well, heat distortion, sand drift, and ancient erosion erase almost everything. Whatever may be left is buried too deep. And yet, the rumors continue. Trekkers still report strange shapes. Locals still point to hills that don't quite look natural. And the name Finini still stirs something in explorers' hearts because maybe he wasn't lying. Maybe he really saw something no one else did. And maybe, just maybe, the lost city of the Kalahari still lies beneath the sand, waiting not to be discovered, but to be remembered. The builders of Bactria. In the dusty cradle of Central Asia, between the mountains of Afghanistan and the flatlands of Turkmenistan, there lies a forgotten memory. One that doesn't roar like the tales of Persia or glimmer like the legends of Babylon. This memory is quieter. It doesn't shout for attention, but what it left behind is impossible to ignore. Buried beneath layers of earth and time are traces of a civilization that seemed to understand math better than their neighbors. Geometry, symmetry, and city. Planning so precise it almost feels modern. And yet, we don't even know what they called themselves. They're known today only by a name borrowed from a nearby land, the Bactria Margiana Archaeological Complex, or just BMX. But long ago, around 4,000 years in the past, they were more than ruins. They were builders. They were thinkers. And then they were gone. No invasion, no disaster, just silence. It was in the 1970s that Soviet archaeologist Viktor Serenity stumbled upon their cities. He was looking for traces of old Silk Road, outposts in the Karakum Desert. Instead, he found an entire civilization no one had expected. Their cities were different, structured in perfect circles and squares, walls made with mud brick, yes, but laid with a planner's mind. They had citadels, storage rooms, ceremonial centers, and wide roads. Some cities even had a central temple, a sort of sanctuary at the heart. But what stood out the most was how deliberately everything was built. These weren't chaotic villages thrown together from need. They were planned, measured, aligned. Someone thought carefully about every step and then walked away. Artifacts found at these sites hint at a culture of remarkable sophistication. Clay seals, some with abstract symbols, others with detailed animal motifs, tools and ornaments, beads and ceremonial vessels, ivory combs, elaborate jewelry, and something else. Traces of a drink, a sacred mixture believed by some to be an early version of a ceremonial potion mentioned in Vedic texts. Its ingredients, poppy, cannabis, ephedra, an ancient elixir for contact with the divine. Who were these people really? Theories swirl like desert wind. Some say they were Proto-Iranians. Others believe they were Indo-Aryan settlers. There's even talk that they traded with Harappa to the east and with Mesopotamia to the west. But none of these ideas explain why they vanished. There were no signs of battle, no mass graves, no burning, no trauma in the archaeological layers. The people of Bactria simply left. Some believe they migrated, blending quietly into neighboring cultures. Their language, their traditions absorbed like a drop in a river. Others think they may have shifted southward toward Persia and India, carrying with them seeds of mythology, architecture, and belief. But wherever they went, their voice went silent. Their script, if they had one, is lost. Their names never recorded. Their gods forgotten. And yet their cities remain quietly waiting beneath the sand. Mathematically perfect, empty, undisturbed. Satellite images show that many more ruins likely exist, hidden beneath the desert floor. But excavation is slow. The land is remote, and political tensions in the region have made digging nearly impossible. So, for now, what we know is only what's been touched. A few walls, a few rooms, and the quiet echo of a civilization that vanished without violence, without collapse, without fame, just stillness. In the end, the story of Bactria is not one of tragedy. It's one of mystery. A people who built with precision, who lived with intention, and who may have chosen to walk away before the world could change them. They left no story, but they left design as if that would be enough. The Green Sahara Kingdom. Long before the Sahara was a desert, it was green, lush, alive. It's hard to picture now. Today, the Sahara is dry, vast, and unforgiving. But if you go back far enough, around 10,000 years ago, it was one of the most fertile places on Earth. Rain fell often, rivers flowed, lakes shimmered under the sun and scattered across that green land, where people, families, communities, and something more. They weren't just surviving the land, they were shaping it. For a long time, scientists thought no great civilization could have existed in the Sahara. It was assumed to be too harsh, even back then, but buried beneath the sands. Evidence said otherwise. In the 2000s, archaeologists working in southwestern Libya, near the borders of Niger and Algeria, began to uncover a mystery. Stone structures, burial mounds, tools, art, but not random pieces, organized ones. They found massive stone enclosures laid out with symmetry. Not just graves, but cemeteries. Entire communities buried in rows. Some with jewelry, beads, pottery, others with cattle buried beside them, carefully placed as if in ritual. These are not nomads passing through. These were people who stayed, who planned, who remembered. One site stood out, known today as Gabal UI. It holds some of the most detailed prehistoric rock art ever discovered. Not crude carvings, but lilac depictions. Images of people dancing, herds of cattle moving across pastures. Even it looks like boats, paddling across rivers that no longer exist. This was the Sahara before the sand, and the people who lived here were not just herders. They had culture, language, perhaps even religion. Another site, Nabta, added even more to the puzzle. Located deep in southern Egypt, Nabta was once a seasonal lake, now completely dry. But around its shores, a stone circle stood. Rough, upright stones arranged in precise alignments. Some matched the stars, others pointed to the summer solstice. Long before Stonehenge, this place was already tracking the heavens. No temples, no kings, just ancient people watching the sky and organizing their lives by it. Some researchers believe the people of Nabtapla were early astronomers. Others suggest they practiced a form of sky worship. Either way, they were building something out of understanding, not just survival. Then the rain stopped. Over centuries, the Green Sahara began to dry. The monsoon shifted south. Lakes shrank. Grasslands faded. The people moved, but they didn't vanish. Some may have traveled east toward the Nile Valley. There's growing evidence that the earliest Egyptians may have been their descendants. Their cattle culture, their astronomical knowledge, even the early religious practices, all seem to echo what was once practiced in the Sahara. So, in a way, the Sahara Kingdom didn't disappear. It evolved. It walked east and built pyramids. But the ruins remain far from tourist sites to buried in sand, dunes under centuries of wind. Whispers of a time when the desert was a garden, when people danced under the rain and watched stars from stones that still stand today. They left no books, no names, just patterns and a haunting suggestion that long before Egypt, a great people looked to the sky and called the desert home. The people of the fire caves in the heart of what is now southwestern China. There are caves, silent, dark, hidden high in the limestone mountains near the borders of Yunnan and Guizhou. Locals call them the fire caves, not because of any flames, but because of what they once held. Charcoal, ash, smoke stains rising toward the ceiling, layer after layer, built up over thousands of years. At first glance, it seems simple. People lived in caves and made fires. But when archaeologists came here, they found something strange. The layers weren't just from one time. They came from many, stacked like chapters in a book no one remembered writing. Some layers dated back 15,000 years. Others were more recent, just a few thousand. But in between, there was something missing. Whole sections of history gone, not eroded, not destroyed, just never there. And in the oldest layers, deeper than any tool had touched in centuries, they found the remains of people. Small, not like modern humans, not quite Neanderthals either. There was something else, something in between. Their skulls were rounded, but their jaws were strong. Their teeth were worn, but not broken. They looked like humans, but not exactly. What puzzled scientists the most was what they left behind. Bones arranged in careful circles. Stone tools placed beside hearths. No woods. No carvings, just traces of life, lived deliberately, but quietly. And always fire. Wherever these people went inside the cave, the fire followed. Every layer, every chamber, darkened by soot, lit by flame. Some suggest they lived here for warmth. Others believe it was ritual. Fire for them may have been sacred, not just for cooking or heat, but for memory, for connection, for survival. But then they were gone. No sign of migration. No signs of burial. Just layers that stop. Suddenly the ashes end. The tools vanish. The fires go cold. And above that silence, a new people come with different tools, different bones, different habits. The old ones, the fire cave people, never seen again. Some researchers think they were an unknown branch of humans, a cousin that didn't survive. Others believe they merged with early Homo sapiens, disappearing into the genes of the living. But the caves remain quiet, still stained with the black of ancient flame, still holding the scent of smoke. No one alive remembers. What draws us to fire? Its warmth, its danger. Maybe four. The fire cave people, it was home. And when they were gone, it was the last thing to leave. The water walls of Arabia. In a vast dry belly of Arabia, where sand stretches farther than the eye can see, there are walls, not ruins, not fences, not markers, walls, miles of them. Not just any kind, perfectly cut, stacked stone, weathered, but still standing after what might be thousands of years. And here's the strangest part. They run straight into nothing. No buildings, no fortresses, no cities. Just dry earthen walls. But once they say, this desert wasn't dry. Once Arabia bloomed, a time so old that even the myths speak of it like a memory of a memory. And these walls, they were part of something. Satellite imagery revealed them first. Long ridges in the earth, so straight, so deliberate, it didn't make sense. At ground level, they barely rise above the sand. You'd walk past them thinking they were just ridges, but from the sky, they go on, some for kilometers. Geologists were confused. Why? Build walls in the middle of nowhere. No signs of farms, no aqueducts, no roads, just walls. But then came the theories. Some said there were animal enclosures, ancient pens for grazing animals. But if so, where are the bones? Others thought they marked ancient trade paths. But why so wide? Why so tall? Then came the strange idea. What if these weren't barriers? What if they were channels? Old ancient channels meant for water, stone-lined, designed to direct the flow of what once was plentiful, a lost hydrological system. That would mean that once here in this endless desert, there were rivers. There were lakes, there was green, and people. But who were they? The Quran mentions a people called Vid, a civilization said to be wealthy, proud, and powerful. So mighty they challenged heaven. Some believe they lived here, and when they vanished, buried beneath a storm of sand. These walls remained, but no city has ever been found. No artifacts, just the stones, endless stones placed by hands that must have known the land would one. They forget them. Some walls are curved, gentle arcs. Others meet at hard angles. They rise where no person lives now, far from any modern village, out in the deadlands. And when the rain comes, which it rarely does, the water follows these walls as if they still remember. A system still guiding water that no longer falls. Archaeologists have tried to dig, but sand is cruel. It hides what it wants and reveals only what it chooses. So the walls remain quiet, half-buried, leading nowhere. Locals say they've always been there, passed by them as children, sat near them in silence. They don't know who built them, but they say they feel watched when walking near them, as if the desert remembers. Some nights, in certain winds, you can hear whispers across the dunes. No words, just breath, like the sigh of a long-lost river. Others report dreams after visiting the sites of floods, of towers, of cities rising, then swallowed whole. No one knows where the dreams come from, stones, but they always end the same way, with silence. Silence, so heavy it feels like the desert itself is holding its breath. Stones. The water walls of Arabia are not just stones. They're questions. They're the bones of something larger, something forgotten. Maybe they guided water. Stones. Maybe they guarded cities. Or maybe they marked the edge of something sacred. And now all that remains are the lines in the sand waiting and the wind that still runs along them like it remembers the way. The mural in the mist. In the mist-shrouded highlands of northern Vietnam, there's a hilltop few outsiders ever reach. Steep, forested, and silent. Tucked beneath a dense canopy of ancient trees partially hidden by moss and time, stands the fractured remains of a temple, its name, its builders, and its purpose completely erased from local memory. Most of the time, it seems like any other overgrown ruin. Stones cracked by roots, dampness seeping through old foundations, vines tangled in collapsed ceilings. But when the early morning fog rolls in, something else begins to surface. Along one wall, worn smooth by weather and time, color begins to emerge. Not with light or paint, but with moisture. As the mist thickens, a mural slowly reveals itself, as if the stone has absorbed the image and only lets it show under the right conditions. The figures come gradually in layers. First outlines, then forms, then expressions. By the time the fog fully settles in, the entire surface is alive with vivid imagery. Scenes that have baffled archaeologists and locals alike. The mural depicts tall figures with elongated limbs standing under stars arranged in constellations we can't quite identify. Animals appear beside them, some resembling real species, others unlike anything known. Horned birds, four-eyed tigers, and winged shapes that don't match any known mythology. In the center, there's a dome-shaped structure hovering above the earth with lines radiating outward like light. Beneath it are what appear to be people, not bowing, not praying, but standing still, eyes wide open, arms at their sides. The most unusual detail is that the mural disappears completely once the mist fades. By mid-morning, the wall is blank again, just dark stone, cold and unremarkable to the touch. No pigment remains, no engravings, nothing visible to the naked eye. Scientists have studied the wall and confirmed there's no dye, no residue, no chemical reaction that would explain the phenomenon. The images don't exist in sunlight. Only the fog reveals them. For decades, local villagers avoided the site. Elders warned younger generations never to walk up the hill. Before sunrise, some believe the mural doesn't just appear, it watches. Others speak of dreams they've had after glimpsing it. Recurring visions of unknown places, voices speaking languages they don't understand, and a sense of overwhelming sadness that lingers long after the fog clears. One story passed quietly among the village elders tells of a foreign researcher who stayed near the site for several weeks, trying to photograph the mural, in full detail. He was never able to capture it on camera. Every photo came out blank or distorted. He eventually gave up and returned to the capital, where he reportedly suffered from vivid hallucinations. He stopped speaking entirely within a year, and to this day, no one knows what he saw during those quiet mornings in the mist. There are theories, of course. Some believe the wall is coated with a reactive mineral that interacts with water particles at specific temperatures. Others claim the effect is psychological, an optical illusion caused by the brain interpreting random water patterns as shapes, like seeing faces in clouds. A few researchers suggest the images are magnetic in origin, though no consistent data supports that view. And then there are the ones who think the mural is real in a different way. Not physical, but perceptual. That the fog doesn't just reveal what's there, but allows the human mind to glimpse something it normally cannot. Not a painting, but a memory, a message, a warning. What strikes most visitors is the emotion the mural evokes. It doesn't feel decorative. It doesn't feel religious in the traditional sense. It feels intentional, intimate, like it was meant for someone, maybe not even us. A form of communication that bypasses words entirely and speaks through images, shapes, and atmosphere. The longer you look, the more the scenes seem to change. Some say they've seen the figures move slightly when no one's looking directly at them. Others claim the stars in the mural shift position each day, tracking something far beyond our understanding. And then, like a switch being flipped, it's gone. The fog lifts. The images fade. See? And the wall returns to its lifeless state, silent, wet, and ordinary. But those who've seen it never forget. Some return again and again, chasing the perfect moment when the mist is just thick enough to reveal the mural in full. 7. Others never return at all, shaken by what they saw or what they felt while seeing it. And the locals, those who've lived their entire lives beneath its shadow, continue to speak softly of the place, not with fear, but with reverence. Because whatever that mural is, it wasn't made to be seen. It was made to be remembered. The land of 100 tombs in the arid deserts of Turkmenistan, where wind carves the hills and silence settles like dust, there lies a forgotten place. It doesn't appear on most maps. There are no guided tours, no major roads, only fragments of stone and tombs. From a distance, the land looks quiet, barren. But step closer and you begin to see them. Tombs small, square, and spread wide across the plain like chess pieces on an invisible board. Some are marked by eroded headstones, others by strange stone domes, but none are recent and none are explained. Local herders call it the land of 100 tombs, though the number is likely far higher. Hundreds of stone graves sit in the open, some clustered, others isolated, as if placed by intention. They stretch out over hills and vanish into the desert beyond. What makes it stranger is what sits in between the tombs. Ruins, faint outlines of what were once homes, crumbling walls, pieces of pottery in the dirt, well, still visible, but dry for centuries. The signs of a city built after the dead were already here. It wasn't a cemetery near a town. Music, it was the town. Archaeologists who surveyed the site were puzzled. Normally, cities bury their dead in a defined spot, a graveyard, a crypt, a hillside just beyond the outer wall. But here, the dead were everywhere. It appeared as though people had chosen to live inside necropolis, to build homes around tombs, to eat, sleep, and raise families within reach of the graves. And then they left. No signs of war, no fire, no quick abandonment, just silence. Stone homes slowly collapsing, graves remaining untouched, an entire city that rose around the memory of the dead and then eventually returned to them. Some have suggested it was a holy site, a place of pilgrimage or spiritual gathering. Others believe it was a nomadic resting place, used for generations, built upon in layers to mace. But there are problems with that theory. The homes weren't temporary. Stonework was careful. Walls were thick. Wells were dug deep, lined with brick. This wasn't a passing stop. This was a settlement. Even more curious, some tombs appear older than others by hundreds of years. The style of stone carving shifts over time, as if many different cultures came and went, but chose to bury their dead in the same sacred ground. As if something about this desert plain called them back. A few tombs have symbols that don't match the others. Strange marks, geometric shapes, no language anyone has yet translated. Others show no marks at all. Just smooth, polished stone without name or title. There's one in particular near the center of the site, larger than the rest. Circular. It has 8 low pillars around its base and a roof that caved in centuries ago. When first uncovered, researchers thought it might be a mausoleum. But the bones inside weren't from a king or ruler. They were from 5 different people, all children buried at the same time. No signs of illness, no signs of violence, just 5 small skeletons lying in a circle, heads facing outward, and no explanation as to why. Locals avoid the area after dark. They say it's not cursed, but it isn't safe either. Some describe hearing voices on the wind. Whispers, names they don't recognize. Others say the graves shift, that the sand moves in unnatural ways, revealing and hiding tombs as it pleases. No one has fully excavated the site. Funding is rare, and interest outside a few curious academics has been minimal. Perhaps that's for the best, because some places aren't lost by accident. Some places are meant to fade, to remain quiet, unanswered. And in this desert of stone and silence, the dead have kept their city not as ghosts, not as legends, but simply as names carved in stone with no one left to speak them. The vanished forest people. Deep in the dense jungles of northern Cambodia, where the trees grow thick enough to blot out the sun and silence hangs between the leaves, lies a mystery older than memory. It isn't a mystery carved in stone. It isn't one etched in scrolls or preserved in artifacts. It's what isn't there that disturbs archaeologists the most. When aerial LAR scans first pierced through the jungle canopy in 2012, they revealed something that had never been visible from the ground. Geometric lines, canals, mounds arranged in perfect symmetry. A lost urban network sprawled beneath the trees, covering hundreds of square kilometers. And yet there were no buildings, no writing, no sculptures, just foundations and infrastructure. They called it Mahendra Parvata, a mountain city, possibly even a royal capital that predated Angkor Wat itself. But this wasn't just one city. The scans revealed something broader. A network of engineered landscapes, cleared forest, elevated roads, massive reservoirs, water channels, and agricultural grids carefully carved into the jungle long before the Khmer Empire reached its peak. It was a civilization massive, organized, and advanced. But the people, they were gone. No graves, no battle remains, no records, just the faint impressions of where they had been and how they once lived. The canals were particularly strange. Some stretched for miles in exact straight lines, redirecting monsoon waters into reservoirs. These weren't small operations. They required planning, surveying, manpower, and maintenance. The kind of infrastructure we associate with governments, perhaps even empires. And yet, unlike the grandeur of Angkor, Mahendra Parvata bore no grand temples, no idols, no declarations of kingship, just the bones of a machine-like society, humming once in the deep green silence of the forest. So where did they go? Some believe disease swept through the region. Waterborne illness or malaria, perhaps. The forest, after all, is beautiful but unforgiving. One shift in climate and a once perfect system collapses. Others suggest famine. Satellite imaging shows patches where rice paddies once thrived. But if drought lasted too long, or if the engineered water system failed, the food would vanish. And when food goes, people follow. Still, some researchers propose a simpler answer. The city was abandoned in favor of Angkor, and Mahendra Parvat was merely a precursor, a learning ground, a failed experiment. But that doesn't explain the scale. It doesn't explain the suddenness. It doesn't explain why so little was left behind. There are no written texts from the vanished forest people. No names, no kings, no myths etched in stone, just outlines, earthworks. A vanished forest empire hidden under the very trees that reclaimed it. And perhaps that's what makes it so haunting. They didn't vanish with a war. They didn't leave behind gods or monuments. They simply walked away. Or maybe they didn't walk at all. Maybe the jungle took them. Not in a mythical way, but in the way nature always does, slow, silent, and absolute. Today, tourists walk through the ruins of Angkor, marveling at its towers and carvings, unaware that just a few miles north, beneath the roots and leaves, lie the ghosts of an older people, a people whose names we will never know. A city with no story and a mystery. The forest still holds tightly in its grasp. The Gold City of Mapangaboi, beneath the sun-baked earth of southern Africa, on a plateau where three rivers meet, the Limpopo, the Shushi, and a stream now long dry. There lies the ghost of a forgotten kingdom. Its name was Mapunji. Before the rise of Great Zimbabwe, before European colonizers ever knew this land existed, this was the center of a powerful trade network. But now it's quiet. The wind shifts dry grass. The hills stand empty. And if you didn't know better, you'd think nothing important ever happened here. But it did. And what remains behind is strange. Archaeologists first uncovered the site in the 1930s. At first, it was just pottery shards and scattered bones. But then they found a hill, Mapangwe Hill, and everything changed. Buried in the upper layers of the hill were graves, royal ones. But they weren't ordinary burials. These people were laid to rest in sitting positions wrapped in cloth, surrounded by gold necklaces, bangles, a delicate golden scepter, and most famously a small rhinoceros carved, entirely out of gold sheet and wood. It was clear these were elite individuals, kings or queens buried high above the common people. This discovery shocked the world. It wasn't just because of the gold, though it was pure and skillfully worked. It was because it challenged a narrative that said complex African kingdoms didn't exist before foreign contact, but Mapunji did, and it thrived. From around 1075 to 1220 AD, this city flourished. People lived in stone homesteads, built terraces on the hillsides, raised livestock, farmed millet, and smelted iron. But more than that, they traded glass beads from India, porcelain from China, Islamic ceramics. Gold left this kingdom in small glittering streams, and goods flowed back in return. Mapangabwe was connected, and yet it vanished. Around the 13th century, the city was abandoned. No massive war, no sign of fire, no records of famine, just silence. Some believe climate change shifted rainfall patterns, drying the region. Others say internal power. Struggles pushed people away, or that trade routes simply shifted to Great Zimbabwe, which rose shortly after. But the mystery isn't just in the disappearance. It's in what they left behind. Stone circles, hundreds of them, perfectly round enclosures, some large enough for houses, others too small, too precise. Their purpose isn't fully understood. Some say they were cattle pens. Others think they were foundations for homes. But a few researchers suggest something else entirely. Astronomical alignments. Some of the circles line up with solstices and seasonal star patterns. Did the people of Matubai read the stars? Did they track seasons not just for farming, but for ceremony? It's possible. And then there's the gold. Only the elite were buried with it, and only on top of the hill. This wasn't a simple community. It had classes, hierarchy, kings, ritual. But the city had no massive palace, no towering temples. Power seemed tied to placement. The top of the hill versus the bottom. The elevated dead versus the common living. A subtle kind of rule. Today, the site is mostly quiet. Mapangabwe Hill is protected. Tourists can't climb it. And maybe that's for the best, because there's something sacred about it still. You can stand at the base, look up at the scrubby hilltop, and feel something weighty, something old, pressing down through the centuries. Bones rest under that soil. Gold still glimmers in stories. And somewhere under layers of dust and time, a kingdom sleeps, waiting to be remembered, not just as a name, but as a place where African kings once ruled, where wealth flowed, and where silence eventually returned. The Valley of the Sealed Steppes. In the remote highlands of Kyrgyzstan, where the air thins and silence grows heavy. There lies a narrow valley tucked between layers of stone and time. No villages mark it. No shepherds graze their herds there. Even locals avoid it. They call it cursed or forgotten. The stories change depending on who you ask. But one thing always remains constant. A staircase cut directly into the rock. Worn, ancient, precise, but leading nowhere. The valley is difficult to reach. Jagged cliffs rise sharply on either side. There are no paved roads, only dusty trails twisted like threads through the mountain passes. Most people pass through the region, unaware that anything unusual is even nearby. But for those who do find the path, what they see makes little sense. The staircase begins at the base of sheer rock face. The first few steps are wide and shallow, carved straight into the mountainside. But they climb at a slight angle, not steep enough to be a defensive structure, not shallow enough to be ceremonial. And they continue upward, turning subtly with the mountain's natural slope. 39 steps in total, each one smooth by time, but still sharp at the edges. Each one deliberate. And then nothing. No landing, no platform, no building. The staircase just stops. It meets a vertical cliff wall and ends without explanation. Geologists who've examined to confirm the steps are not natural. This is an erosion or glacial shaping. The cut is too symmetrical, the placement too rhythmic. This was made by hand, with tools, and with intent. But what kind of intent carves a staircase to nowhere? Theories abound. Some archaeologists suggest it may have once led to a wooden structure, a temple or watchtower long since decayed. But there's no evidence, no post holes, no charred remains, nothing. Others believe it may have been symbolic, a spiritual ascent, a ritual path used for offerings, prayer, or perhaps something more mysterious. In some Central Asian folklore, stairs represent the journey of the soul. The act of climbing is itself a form of devotion. Could this staircase have served that purpose? Or perhaps it was never meant to be walked at all. There are older legends, much older, whispered by elders who rarely speak of the place. They say the stairs were carved for someone who never came, that the valley was a meeting place or a gate. Not a gate in the physical sense, but a threshold between worlds. There are tales of lights appearing above the steps. Cold, pale lights that hover without source. No sound, no heat, just presence. Strange, yes, but consider this. The rock here is magnetized in odd patches. Compasses spin or freeze entirely. Radio signals cut out. Birds don't nest on the cliffs above. And there is another mystery. Each step, when struck with stone, makes a slightly different tone, almost like keys on an instrument. Not random, measured. Some researchers have even tried recording them. The tones fall within a specific harmonic range. Was it music, a signal? If so, who was meant to hear it? And why does no one live here? Now, the nearest habitation is over 40 kilometers away. There's water, there's shelter, yet no ruins, no campsites, no burials have ever been found in a valley. It is a place carved and then left behind. Even a moss grows reluctantly here. The wind moves through it but doesn't linger. Time touches it, but lightly like it's holding its breath. Satellite imagery shows faint outlines of more stone beneath the hillside above the stairs. But no one has dared excavate. Permits are denied. Locals protest. They say it's not meant to be disturbed. They say those who try don't come back the same. Skeptics laugh, of course, but they don't camp near the valley. And the few who stayed overnight, most don't talk about what they heard. One researcher claimed he heard footsteps on the steps below him, even though he was alone. Another said the mountain hummed all night, just low enough to feel but not hear. You won't find much about the Valley of the Sealed Steps in guidebooks. Even academic papers are rare. But the images are real. The coordinates exist. The staircase is still there. 39 perfect stone steps leading upward into nothing. Or maybe into something. We've simply forgotten how to see the villages that walked deep in the wind-battered expanse of the Mongolian Altai, where grasslands roll into jagged peaks and the sky seems endless. There is a quiet mystery that has never made headlines. No great disaster. No lost treasure, just stones. Hundreds of them, ancient, carved, aligned, and yet not quite where they should be. Scattered across these lonely valleys are what archaeologists refer to as kirigurs, burial mounds made of stone, sometimes surrounded by circular or rectangular arrangements of standing rocks. Some date back over 3,000 years. Others are far older. Most belong to Bronze Age nomadic cultures whose names are long forgotten, their history etched only in these silent markers. But here's the strange part. They move. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, subtly, just enough to be noticed when compared. Across time, old survey records from Soviet expeditions in the 1950s mark the coordinates of certain sites. Those coordinates don't match today. In some cases, a group of standing stones has shifted by a meter. In others, burial rings have tilted, not from erosion or landslides, but in a way that feels coordinated. Archaeologists assumed at first that earlier measurements were flawed. Equipment back then wasn't as precise, but then new scans were made. LiDAR satellite overlays, digital 3D mapping. The movement was real. One site, near the Tavern Bog Range, was photographed in 1994. A symmetrical row of 7 stones stood like sentinels beside a burial mound. In 2021, the same site was rephotographed. The stones still stood same height, same alignment, but one had shifted half a meter to the east, and the 2 outermost stones had rotated. Not toppled, rotated, as if deliberately turned. No human had been there in decades. The locals call this area the Hush Hills. That's not a translation. It's the actual word they use, hush, because the wind moves. Strangely here, because the birds don't land. Because even the livestock skirt these stones like they remember something people have forgotten. There's no mythology to explain the movement. No great legend. Only scattered comments from elders who claim the stones walk when the sky listens. It doesn't make much sense. But neither does the shifting ground. Geologists were called in. They looked for tectonic faults, for freeze-thaw patterns in the soil, for evidence of glacial movement. Nothing conclusive. Yes, the ground is active in places, but not enough to move whole stones without disturbing the surrounding soil. Not enough to re-angle standing stones without visible damage, and certainly not repeatedly across multiple sites in different valleys. That's the part that troubles people. This isn't a one-time landslide. It's something ongoing, quiet, slow, and oddly precise. At one site, known informally as the Square Village, 4 stone rings form corners of what appears to be a missing structure. No walls remain, just the bases. But every 10 years, those bases inch toward each other, not outward, not randomly toward the center. Some suggest magnetic anomalies. It's true, there are spots in the Altai where compasses spin. Some researchers believe iron deposits below the surface may subtly affect the stones, especially if they're rich in ferrous material. But no one has measured consistent readings to support that idea. And besides, it doesn't explain the patterns. One site contains what looks like a procession, rows of stones moving in a crescent shape, as if walking toward a central monolith. The curve has grown tighter over time, not from collapse, but from shifting base positions. You can trace the movement across photos from the last 60 years. It's not weathering. It's like they're migrating deliberately. Is it illusion? Misrecorded maps. Human interference. That last idea has been tested. Hidden cameras have been placed. Motion sensors too. Nothing. Days, months, years. No visitors. No tampering. But when the footage is compared after long intervals, weeks or more, stones are different. No sound, no tremor, just change. One researcher, a quiet man who'd spent his life documenting these ancient burial sites, once said something he probably shouldn't have. It's like not ruins, he whispered. It's like they're still alive, just very slow. When asked what he meant, he refused to elaborate, but he later quit the project and never returned. Some locals believe the sites are sacred, of course, but not in a religious way. More like they're still listening, still watching. There's a belief, faint and often mocked, that these villages were never made for the living, that they were places of preparation, stages for something that hasn't happened yet, or has, but we missed it. Even the burial mounds sometimes show signs of alteration. Small depressions appear where none existed. Rings flatten, then rise again. Grass grows unevenly, but never over certain stones, as if the Earth still respects invisible boundaries. Satellite data continues to be inconsistent. One orbit shows a cluster of stones in one location. A month later, it's changed by a meter. The imagery is reviewed, confirmed, archived. Something is happening, but no one knows why. There's no profit in it. No artifacts to steal, no temples to tour, just silent stones in the wind. Yet, the feeling you get when walking among them stays with you. The sensation that you're being watched not malevolently, not with intent, but with awareness. Like you've entered a place that is aware of your presence and is choosing for now not to respond. What's more unsettling is this. A few of the newer expeditions have returned with slightly different maps than they left with. Not just coordinates, not just satellite positions, entire arrangements of stones that weren't marked before. New circles, new lines. Somehow the villages are growing, or reassembling, or remembering. One scholar in her final published note before retiring posed a chilling question. What if these aren't remnants of cities that once moved? What if they're cities that never stopped? The wet pyramids of Guyana, hidden in the deep rainforest of South America, beyond rivers that wind like forgotten trails, and through jungles so thick it muffles time itself, lies something almost no one expects to find. Not a city, not ruins in the usual sense, but mounds quiet, geometric, precise. They don't rise like the pyramids of Giza. They do not shine with limestone or granite. These are made of earth, compacted soil, shaped so methodically that it defies coincidence. From above, they barely register as subtle bulges in the green expanse. Yet once you stand upon one, the symmetry becomes undeniable and unsettling. These earth pyramids are found in southern Guyana, a place where the land is constantly wet, where rainfall floods the lowlands, and anything built would soon be swallowed by mud. And yet, these structures rise, silent, stable, purposeful. Satellite imagery first revealed their patterns, equidistant mounds, square outlines, trenches that appear to direct water. Some were so evenly spaced they looked like they belonged in a blueprint. And yet no blueprints exist. No culture in this region was known to build like this. Not in stone, not in dirt, not in any material. The local Patona people have stories. They speak of ancestors, not their grandparents or great-grandparents, but the ones who came before the forest, people who built things. Platforms that stay dry even in the worst rains. The tribe avoids these areas. They say the land breathes, that it hums beneath your feet. When a team of researchers visited one of the largest mounds in 2012, something odd happened. As they drilled for core samples, water began to rise. Not from rain, not from runoff, but from inside the earth. Cold, clear, pressurized. Then the team fell sick. 2 researchers reported symptoms like decompression sickness, dizziness, nausea, ringing in the ears. The kind of thing you'd expect deep underwater, but they were on land. 2. They stopped the dig, packed up, and left. The mound remains undisturbed to this day. There are no inscriptions, no bones, no pottery, just shaped earth, purest. Platforms, structures that stay mostly dry in a place where nothing stays dry. It doesn't make sense. Not in the textbook way. Some say they were ceremonial. Others say agricultural. Some whisper they were something older, something not yet understood. But if there's one thing that remains clear, it's this. The jungle hides its past well. The vanished forest city won. Discovery of a hidden metropolis. Not long ago, satellites sent out pulses that slipped through foliage. The signal returned with startling clarity. Beneath the treetop shadows lay outlines of walls, avenues, and water channels. LiDAR imaging so precise that it reads the land under leaves drew circuits of canals, terraces, causeways, buildings aligned with cosmic arcs. It painted a city. Field teams arrived, cameras and boots in hand, ready for Enoran temples. What they found instead were earthworks, platforms carefully constructed in the wet soil, raised walkways linking stone ponds, canals leading to nothing, then reappearing. A grid that suggests planning unknown to most 92nd century cities. Local guide, SOA, stood by a mossy embankment and shook his head. The spirits built this, he whispered, pointing where the jungle floor used to be square, where a road may once have curved. So begins our journey into a world that thrived without leaving the obvious markers. A chapter lost not to barbarism or invasion, but to a conscious quiet fading into green. 2. Mapping the invisible city. Walking through the forest today, you might never suspect anything human lies beneath. But here and there, stone. Footing pokes through earth, roots curled around edges. A broad terrace half covered by palm fronds still holds water in dry months. Elsewhere, straight lines of stone slabs lie just under the soil like clues waiting to be followed. Researchers have mapped at least 4 distinct enclosures, each a courtyard or temple space roughly 200–300 meters across. Between them, causeways crisscross, in some places stacked 3 or 4 layers of stone atop earth and still standing. Some of these appear aligned with the solstice sunrise and sunset, a quiet suggestion that this was more than just a settlement. It was built with ritual, with meaning, potentially with kings. Not far from the terraces lie the faint outlines of reservoirs. Beret once vital and anchor, but here smaller, closer to the earth, integrated into the forest floor, so the water sunk back into the land, not channeled outward. We can map them. We can photograph them. But for centuries, they were invisible because the people who built them drew their walls without stone and set their bridges below the canopy. 3. Who lived here? We have names, some scattered in chronicle scraps. Camera records hint at kings preceding Jivar Main II, learning from Colleen's priests. They speak of royal canals, of mountain retreats for meditation, but nothing precise. No stela commemorates battles here. No library stands, just hazy memorials in the Rice Chronicles, the kind meant for ritual recitation, not history. Pottery shards and tool fragments, ceramic scraps glazed in muted reds. A few coins, iron nails, reused stoneware. Tell us lives were lived here, not grandeur like Anchor, but domestic. Villagers and farmers, scribes and priests, children running between water channels. The stonework was functional but careful. The city pursued stability as much as spectacle. So, was Mahendraparvata a royal seat or a religious retreat? Men and women living within temple walls, buyers and sellers, patrons of ritual, people who quietly built day by day and then moved on. For, rising above the flood cooling, the mountain itself holds the key. At 500 m above the plains, its slopes were cooler, better drained. Monsoons provided water, but not stagnation. 2. The city layout shows a mindful response. Terraces that soak in rain, stone walls that guide runoff, sloughs that release water slowly. Some causeways still hold puddles in the dry season. Some channels dry out. But when monsoon returns, the whole city seems to breathe. Water grows, fields flood, and sloughs release. An infrastructural dance between land and life. We do not see the temples, but we see the water systems that fed them. This was a hilltop paradise, not a defensive fortress, but a city balanced between wet and dry, between plain and mountain, between temple and village. 5 disappearance without collapse and then stillness. No burned temples, no sacked gates, just absence. One season the city faded, fields were abandoned, houses dismantled, earth collapsed, portions of causeways, water channels clogged with litter. Nature crept back. Why? There are theories. Kings moved to Anchor. Political consolidation favored the plains. Or monks decided to walk deeper into the jungle, or pilgrimage routes shifted. Or the mountain's holiness eclipsed its usefulness. None of it matches war or disease or disaster. It was a quiet departure, gradual, intentional. Imagine your parents lived in a place that symbolized heaven on earth. But the next generation moved because rice grew better east. So the place was left lightly dismantled, then left again. Trees collapsed temples. Vines choked causeways. The earth memorized the leaves and forgot the city. The forgotten shores of the before Athens, before Rome, before even the pyramids reached the skies, there was an island in the Iron Sea. Quiet now, peaceful, but once it pulsed with life. Homes, temples, art, all lost beneath layers of ash. This isn't legend. This isn't a tale whispered around campfires. This is real. A place frozen in time by a cataclysm so violent it silenced an entire civilization in hours. And to this day, no one truly knows what they left behind. Let's walk through the ash gently, quietly, together. The island we now call Santorini was once known as Thera. But even before that, it may have had another name. A name buried so deep, not even the sea can whisper it anymore. Long ago, this volcanic island held one of the most advanced Bronze Age civilizations in the Iron. They built multi-story homes, painted vivid fresco on the walls, developed complex drainage systems, and they did it all around 3,600 years ago, before Greece was even Greece. But then it ended. Not in slow decline, not in conquest. In one single moment, the second largest volcanic eruption in human history tore through the heart of the island exploded. The sky turned black. Tsunamis swept across the Mediterranean. And just like that, they were gone. Thera is more than a volcanic island. It's a riddle wrapped in ash. What kind of people lived here? Who were they? Why don't we find their bodies? And why, when we dig through their city of Akroi, preserved in volcanic ash like Pompeii, does it feel as if they had warning? No skeletal remains, no signs of chaos, no mass. Panic, just empty homes, beds made, tables set, paintings still intact. It's as if they walked away, as if they knew. But how? The city of Akroi, once hidden beneath 30 m of volcanic ash, has become one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites in Europe. Archaeologists expected to find what most ancient sites reveal: bones, tools, clutter. But instead, they found order. Complex buildings 2 or 3 stories high. Plumbing systems that worked with gravity. Bathrooms with running water. Murals that showed. Dolphins, monkeys, flowers, and ships painted in bright reds, blues, and golds. These people weren't primitive. They were sophisticated, artistic, organized. They were not just farmers. They were navigators, traders, thinkers, and then silence. For a long time, Pharaoh was thought to be just another forgotten island. But then came the idea, a theory. What if this was Atlantis? The city Plato described, a powerful seafaring civilization that vanished in a day. Could Pharaoh be the source of the myth? The timelines nearly match. Plato said Atlantis disappeared 9,000 years before his time, but that number might be symbolic. What we do know is that the eruption changed everything. It created climate shifts. It disrupted Egyptian agriculture. It could have caused plagues, famines, civilizational collapse. And yet, the itself is the quietest, the most absent. When a volcano exploded, it didn't just destroy, it preserved. The volcanic ash acted like a time capsule. Frozen rooms, wooden furniture turned to stone. Staircases still waiting for footsteps. But what's strangest of all, no gold, no weapons, no signs of rulers or kings. Unlike Ma or Egypt or Sumer, it's like they didn't care for monuments. They didn't build giant temples to gods or themselves. They built homes, fresco gardens. Maybe they didn't want to be remembered. Maybe they wanted peace. And peace is what they got in a way. But there's something else, something quiet that haunts the excavations. A pattern. The walls in Akroi are covered in murals, but not just decorations, stories, visuals of long sea journeys, of animals that don't exist on the island, of ships arriving and leaving, of people dressed not for farming, but for ceremony, and most chilling of all, a room with a painting that shows a red sky over black waves. Was this prophecy, memory, or just coincidence? We'll never know, because the people of the never returned. Some archaeologists believe the people of the were part of the broader Minoan world based in Crete. The Minoans were Europe's first advanced civilization. Tundai built palaces like Gnosis, developed writing systems we still haven't decoded, worshipped goddesses and bulls, and then Tundai, too, disappeared. Was the beginning of the end? Was the eruption a domino that collapsed the entire Minoan civilization? Some say yes. Others say it's too simple. But when you stand in a creary under the dust, under the shadows of walls still standing after millennia, it's hard not to feel attuned that this was the start of something or maybe the end. The volcano still rumbles. Today, tourists walk Santorini's caldera, sipping wine and snapping photos. Most don't know what sleeps beneath them. Most don't see the ash beneath the soil. Most don't hear the silence. But you do because now you know that was real. It happened. It vanished. And no one truly knows.